that we cover first responders of Mississippi. This webinar series was brought back based on your request. We have heard from you that you are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually exhausted, and that you welcome these webinars and the information that they provide. So we will continue to do that. We are very excited to be working again with First Responders of Mississippi. I don't think that Ruth Ann Rigby, who is a co-founder of First Responders, was able to join us this evening, but we want to say a very special thank you to her for partnering with us on this, as well as many other endeavors. We have a very special presenter this evening talking about a topic that I think everyone needs to hear about, especially with all of the bad news in the world and the trauma associated with COVID. Hope is absolutely essential at this point in time. And so we have with us this evening, Dr. Carl Mangum, presenting on Speak Hope. And as opposed to what we normally do, we provide you a very lengthy introduction. You can find information on him on the email that was sent out announcing the series. So I'm just going to simply say that this is an individual with a wealth of experience in a variety of roles. And welcome him and let him provide his presentation. And we're going to change this up a little bit at the end. In the past, we've always asked that you put your questions in the chat box. You can certainly continue to do that. But at the end of his presentation, if you have a question and you would like to ask it, please unmute yourself. If you're on your phone, you can hit *6 and unmute yourself and ask your question. So we're trying to provide as much time for the presentation and the question and answer session. So Dr. Mangum, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, thank you for kicking off our relaunch of Thriving and Surviving.
Thank you, Teresa. It's an honor to be with y'all tonight. And man, we've got so much stuff that we could talk about and cover, and just so much stuff that we really need to talk about thriving and surviving, and so much that we've all been going through individually and collectively. And just a shout out to all the first responders out there, nurses, medics, physicians, pharmacists, just everyone that has a role in healthcare, and the people that love them and support them. In my opinion, they're just as important. Like Teresa said, I have a long history in doing this, and I've served in a lot of roles, and I continue to serve in several different roles, not only in the School of Nursing as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I continue to serve on the fire department as a lieutenant in Hinds County, but I still continue to command one of the federal medical teams for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And I just returned from a mission about 2 weeks ago now from California, actually. And we're still doing COVID missions. And the particular mission I was on and my team was on, we were working in a hospital about halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego. And our job was to help decompress their emergency department. It was a level 2 trauma center and had a very large catchment area. And their problem was they were getting ambulances in, not only with COVID patients, but with trauma patients. And they were having ambulances having to have wait in their ER anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And those patients were stacking up, and they didn't have any place to put them. And they were trying to discharge them back out into the street or admit them into their hospital as fast as possible. And of course, there were a certain amount of patients that would just get up and leave AMA. The ones that could physically get up and leave would do that. And so our job was to go in and help their emergency department see the patients. The medics on our team were able to take the patients and take report from the medics on the ambulances, and the ambulances could be returned to the streets to go out and take care of patients. And so we were there for a total of 14 days. We worked 13 shifts, and the hospital asked us to work from noon to midnight. And I don't know if you've ever worked noon to midnight, but it completely wrecks your day. Because by the time you get up in the morning, get something to eat and report to work, it's rough. And then when you don't get off till midnight and get back to the hotel, and and get ready for bed, it's time to get up again. So it's kind of rough. So that was our latest mission, and I've been gone a total of, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks total over the past 2 years with COVID, away from what I do normally with the federal government and with these response teams. And it's not to mention the stuff that I've done, here locally, and stuff with the medical center, stuff with the fire department. And so it takes a toll. And I had someone ask me, what's it like to go away when you're going to do the same thing? And, most of the people here in central Mississippi know that we've had one of the same teams come to help us at the university. Plus the Good Samaritan people come and helped us also when we were, at our worst time with COVID. And it's one of those things that, the people on the other end really need you, and you're there for a reason, and it feels good. But when you get back home, you have a small window of time there that you have to adjust, what we call being back in the real world. Because when you're away doing that, you're away from your family, you're away from, your normal stuff, your normal food, your normal everything. The rules in California were much different than what we were used to them here in Mississippi. Everywhere we went, we had to be masked up no matter, where it was. Gas was already $5 a gallon there. So, we're kind of worried about it being here now with the war in over there with the Russians, but it was already $5 there. And so it was just different. And so getting back to the real world, we have to adjust. And I found through the years, it takes me about 2 weeks to adjust back to the real world. And for me, it's a little different. As the commander, I'm used to having anywhere from on deployments, I'm responsible anywhere from usually 7 to the most people I've been responsible for is 102 when we were at Fort Walton Beach a few years ago. And so when you're responsible for that many people 24 hours a day for the whole deployment, you don't sleep much, and you worry about a lot of things. You have to answer a lot of questions, and you're all the time talking back to Washington and answering their questions, and working back with the hospital that you're attached to and answering their questions, and getting things taken care of. So when I get back home, I have to get all of that out of my head, and I have to realize that I'm not in charge anymore. And trust me, my wife quickly straightens me out that I'm not in charge, and that I just need to do what I'm told, and things will work out better. But it's a different set of mind when you're on deployment than when you're back at your regular home. So you have to adjust. And trust me, I'm telling you all these stories to set up what I want to say here. And tonight I wanted to talk about speaking hope. And I've got a lot of quotes to tell you. And the first one is, hope is the only thing that is stronger than fear. And when you think about that, hope is the only thing that is stronger than fear. In life, when you go through and talk to people, their fear of failure is stronger than their fear of death with most people. Now, I know you say, Carl, that's crazy talk. But if you really think about it, most people's fear of failure is stronger than their fear of death. When you talk to them, they say, I fear of failing this test. I fear of not doing well in school. I fear of not getting the job. I fear of not doing well in the job. I fear of not doing well with my family, or providing for my family, or doing whatever it is. And some people will even say, well, I'd rather die, than be a failure in life. Even some people will tell you that have attempted suicide. They'll say it's because I was a failure and nobody liked me and I couldn't get things done. And so hope is the only thing that is stronger than fear. One of the things that I have to say to that is this other quote, that days are long, but years are short. And the older I get, the more that makes sense. Many of you know that I have 8 grandchildren now, 7 boys and 1 little girl. And the little girl, Georgia, is the baby of the group. I tell you what, some of the days that I put in at work and some of the days I put in deployments or on a fire call and working with people, boy, they do get long. But I tell you what, these years seem to be getting real short. And that's one of the things that when we're speaking hope to each other and you're speaking hope to yourself and we're speaking hope to the multitude, we need to remember that for ourselves, that these days are long sometimes, but the years themselves are short. What we're going through is a period of time. And I imagine the people in the pandemic in 1918, excuse me, they probably thought the same thing we did, that, man, this seems like it's going on forever. And when you look back at the pictures and the accounts of that pandemic, they did face some of the things. They just didn't have the technology and the communication that we did. And so when you think the days are long, but the years are short, this too shall pass. And I know many of us are tired, we're burnt out, we have anxiety, depression. One of the things that people don't really talk about is PTSD. And when you read through the DSM-5, and I actually had the pages open a couple of nights ago and had my wife read it. And I said, does that look like a lot of us as nurses and healthcare people? And, and she's a high school teacher. And I said, many of you, that teach school even face this of what you have, been dealing with students and parents and things like that. And she said, yes, I see it. And I see where people meet the criteria for PTSD. And that's one of the things that we think of, the anxiety and the depression, but a lot of us don't think about the PTSD that we're facing. And it's out there. The other thing that's become clearly evident to me, especially where I do clinicals, is the children's mental health. And it's an epidemic within itself of how kids are responding, not only to the pandemic itself, but to all the things that have gone on with it, being isolated from school, being unable to be socialized, their inability to communicate face-to-face with each other, the perils of online social media, the bullying that goes on. And man, I thought just being in elementary and middle school when I was a kid back in the 70s, that was bad enough, but this online stuff, y'all, it's getting out of hand. Kids coming up in their family life, and I certainly don't want to talk about broken homes, but their family life itself is rough. I hear stories every day that I'm in clinicals of them being passed around from home to home to home. And some of these people are 14, 15, and 16 years old, and they've been facing this most of their life. And the things and other people that they're being subjected to by their caretakers, by their family members, is just, it makes your skin want to crawl. And so all of this combined with the pandemic and the things that are going on that they've been faced to, it's really scary. And so children's mental health right now is at a crisis state, and it's really becoming a nationwide problem. It's not just us in Mississippi, it's a nationwide problem. And hopefully we're going to see more about that. One of the things that kind of goes along with that, days are long, years are short, is that this is a moment in time. And this will pass overall, but it's what we do in this moment of time that's going to matter, and how we react. Now, how many times that maybe your mother or grandmother told you it's not what you do, it's what you say, or how you react to something is the issue. Or I've had people say, well, it's the measure of you of a leader, how you react to what they say or do. And that's what I'm trying to get you to see, that is how we react to this at this time. Even though we're tired, burnt out, and some of us are just flat out pissed off about how things have been going, working shorthanded, working tired, people just calling in for, they were fine yesterday, but, they just needed a mental health day off, as they say. And people feel like they've been taken advantage of. And shoot, who can blame them? How many of us have had friends, coworkers that have just quit to go work somewhere, travel nursing, making, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a week, and some of us have really gotten upset about that. But the way I've looked at it is some of them needed it. Their spouse or a significant other lost their jobs, and they were the sole breadwinner for the family during the height of COVID, and their family needed the money. So I couldn't blame them for doing it. Some of them have paid off student loans, or they've paid off cars, or they've paid off mortgages. They've paid off bills where they were behind in. So they had an opportunity. They took advantage of it. And part of me can't blame them for it. If I'd have been younger, I might have taken advantage of it too. I guess, unfortunately for me, I was old enough and too close to retirement to do that. So, but I'm saying we're to the point now where we've got to let some of that go and get back into the fight for everyday stuff. That money and that stuff for that travel nursing is not going to last forever. I don't know where that money came from. I guess it came from the government. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it can't last forever. The real world is going to settle back in at some point, and everybody's going to have to go back to work because that money will run out for them and from wherever it's coming from. Some of the things that I talk about to other people is I say, let's worry about today. Don't stress about the things you can't control. I've said that just this week to some of my patients. Let's focus on the things we can change, the things we can control, and don't worry about the things we can't control, because that'll just make you sicker, and it'll just piss you off even more. I always tell people, pray about things. And as much as you're worrying about it, pray that much that you're thinking about it. So if you're thinking about it 3 hours a day, maybe you need to be praying about it 3 hours a day. That might make a difference. And sometimes we got to trust the timing of the Almighty and not your timing, because the timing of things, we want it yesterday, but the timing of the Almighty might be, COVID's been going on over 2 years now. So we got to do it in their timing. One of the other things that I want to talk just briefly about that goes in with all of the issues that we've been facing as healthcare providers and first responders is the attacks on nurses and first responders. And the issue of that alone is enough to have a whole week's worth of talks about. There's legislation in many of the state houses throughout the country. Federal legislation, A&A is working on that. I know that for a fact. In Mississippi, if you attack a nurse, you can be brought up on a felony charge. First responders, if you attack, you can be brought up on a felony charge. But we've got to get that nationwide, and we've got to get that protection there, and we've got to get institutions willing to back that up and to file those charges. And we've got to get people on board with that, and we've got to get that known out to the public, and we've got to protect each other with those laws, and we've got to make sure that people understand that. We cannot have people, and it's not always the patients. Sometimes it's the friends or the family members. And I'm not knocking society as a whole, okay, but the past couple of years have been rough on everybody, and people's fuse are short, and people walk in and demand things, and when you don't do it, they want to hit you, they want to attack you, and I'm not excusing any of it. And there's times I've seen where people couldn't help it. Now, if they have a closed head injury and they're talking out of their mind, that's one thing. But if they're fully got all their mind and they're functioning and they're just pissed off and they want to attack you, that's unacceptable. Okay. And that's a factor in on all the things that that's been going on with the pandemic, and working shorthanded, working tired, working all this. Then all of a sudden a family member starts cussing you and starts throwing stuff at you and all that because they're upset and all that too. that's unacceptable. And we have to factor in that and all the stuff that we're doing. While I was in California, that an example of that happened, and it's fresh on my mind. Our room that our command post was in was their ICU waiting room, which had been closed because of COVID. It was right outside the ICU, which was right next to their ER. And we had a gentleman that was outside of that, and he started in on two of the security guards. And I mean, he was pretty much cussing them, and he warned them what he was fixing to do. And he was fixing to whoop both of their butts and go right on into the ICU and see his family member, and anybody else that got in his way, he was going to take them out too. Well, my safety officer that was with me, she motioned for me to come to the door quickly. And I did. And she said, listen to this. And I heard all he was saying. And then I just kind of stepped to the door, and I stepped outside in the hallway. And the security guards had already called for help. And one of the directors of nursing, she showed up. And, I was prepared to intervene as best I could, because if he had attacked us as federal employees, he was definitely going to jail. And that was one of the things that, I told the director of nursing later. I said, if he'd have, we were going to intervene, and if he had attacked us, he'd have went to federal prison, because it definitely against federal law to attack federal employees that are there for a response. And she said, well, that would have been handy to know. I would have let you handle that. And I said, no, you did a great job. She separated him, took him outside actually, and got him to calm down, and he didn't do anything. So she did a great job in doing that. And that's one of the things that we have to do. All right. I think I talked enough about that. Let's talk about some of the things that we need to do. Okay. Number one, we need to seek help. We need to help each other, first of all. And, the military calls it the buddy system, and they call them battle buddies, and they look out for one another. You're assigned to somebody, and whether no matter where you work at in nursing or first response, on the fire ground with the fire department, you're assigned to somebody, and you're there to look out for them. If you're on an ambulance, your partners who you look out for. On a nursing unit, the other people on your shift are the ones you look out for. And the same thing goes this. You need to be looking out for one another. And if somebody's having a bad day, you need to ask about it. And if somebody's acting really strange, you need to ask about it. And don't be afraid to ask. And ask those important questions. Hey, what's wrong? Do you need some help? Don't be afraid to get them some help. Don't be afraid to bring in management if you need to. This is not I got you. This is I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to, at some point, you may be saving their life. And that's, people are always afraid to go there. I don't want to say anything about, suicide or stuff like that, guys, but people always tell me that. But I'm the first one to tell you, if it's that bad, you need to be asking about it. No one's ever committed suicide because somebody else asked them, have you thought about committing suicide? Trust me, if they're thinking about it, they've already thought about it. You're not putting the thought in their head. That's one of those myths that's out there. So, or if you're the one that's going through it, seek help, ask for help, ask one of your friends, ask the charge nurse, ask the nurse manager, ask the shift leader, ask the lieutenant or the captain if you're in the fire service or the EMS, or in the, if you're in the police service, ask the shift commander. Any of that, seek help. It's nothing, there's no shame in asking for help. And I know it's tough for the guys out there for the males to ask for help, but hey, we care about you. Ask for help. And it's so that important. Couple of quotes I want to give you from real people. Pardon me, let me give me a drink here. I get to talking too much. I get passionate. Y'all know me. I get passionate about stuff, and I'm highly passionate about this. This is a quote from Nelson Mandela, rest his soul. He said, may your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. And in all this, what I'm trying to say is, guys, we've got stuff to hope for. Many of us have careers that we want to finish strong in. Many of us have careers we're just starting. Many of us have careers we're in the middle, and we've got high hopes. Some of us want to finish with doctorates. Some of us want to finish leading an organization, whether it's a school, whether it's being a captain of a firehouse, whether it's being a captain of an EMS, whatever the case may be. You're in the middle of your career and you got high hopes of stuff you want to do. And many of us are starting out with families. Many of us are in the middle of families. Me, I want to see grandkids graduate from high school and get into college. You know, we all have hopes. And this pandemic thing, guys, is fixing to be behind us. The president pretty much declared it over last night with his speech. Of course, it's not that easy, and I wished it was, or we declared it over, you know, a while back. But you know, numbers are starting to wane, and hope is there that it's going to be over with. And so we've got to look at what our hopes are and not our fears, and we've got to make choices to move forward and to do that and look at that. Another one is from Helen Keller. And I know y'all thinking, boy, Carl's really reaching out to have quotes from Nelson Mandela and Helen Keller. But although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it. And, you know, when I read that, I was like, you know, coming from her, that is so true. And there's so many examples of it. And, you know, we could all name probably many examples of that. And there's so many good stories that have come out of COVID of people that survived and are back working now and back with their families. And many of us that have done many things and are doing so much better with it and moving forward. It's just so great. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to say this. Make a difference in someone's life today and tomorrow. Hope changes everything. So that's why I want to talk about speaking hope. Now, let's turn it back over and go to some questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mangum. I do want to read one of the statements that was included in the chat. This was from Kim Douglas, and it says, the people of Ukraine are demonstrating hope right now. So as you said earlier, you can look around and definitely see that. If anyone would like to pose a question, simply unmute yourself and you can ask a question, or if you are participating via phone, then you can hit *6 and that will unmute yourself on the phone. I do have a couple of questions that people have sent me via text, if y'all will give me just one moment. One is, if you have a colleague that you're worried about, can you give us a suggestion on a couple of questions or statements to make to that colleague, especially in a situation where they are exhibiting depression? And I think this means maybe potentially, or maybe they're also worried about the colleague in suicide. So could you give us a couple of suggested questions and or statements?
Sure. What I would do is talk with a colleague, and it's usually best if there's two of you, but don't take, you know, 5 or 6 people. Don't overwhelm them. But two of you that are maybe closest with that colleague, and just say, hey, and for lack of a better term, we'll just use Teresa. I'll use Teresa's name, and we'll just say Teresa as a generic name. Hey, Teresa, we're just kind of worried about you and just wanted to talk with you and see how you're doing. Would you like to talk? You know, we're here for you, and we're just a little concerned about you. And we just wanted to offer to talk with you. You don't want to do it in the middle of the shift. You don't want to do it at the beginning of the shift. You want to do it at the end of a shift or away from the place of work if possible. Because if this person opens up, you need to be ready to talk and be ready for them to tell you bad things. That's the thing. When you ask the question, you've got to be prepared for the answer. And if they come across with the potential for suicide, you've got to be able to be prepared to get them help. And if they're saying that they're thinking about suicide and they have a plan, they need to go to the emergency room because they need help. And that's the bottom line. That's it. If they have a significant other, at that point, you would need to call them and get them involved because it becomes a family affair at that point. And, you know, it's one of the things that people say, you know, we didn't think about that. You know, if they have children and they end up at the ER, if they're a single parent, who's going to take care of the kids that night? So I know I'm making it, giving you a lot of things to think about. First thing though, is to get to them and ask them, hey, how you doing? You can start out just that simple, but then the next question is, once they open up, well, you just seem a little distant. And we're just concerned about you and wanting to make sure you're okay. And start that way and ease yourself into it. And it may take a couple of times talking to them. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes. We also have, and this was via text, a request for a presentation. I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Dr. Mangum, on the impact that social media is having on children. And so there has been a request for some additional information on that, including some things to look for, to be concerned about on social media posts, and also how to interact with children. And then it has in parentheses, especially my grandchildren, when it comes to social media. So I think that is obviously a concern that many people have at this point in time. So perhaps you would like to join us in the near future to provide some additional information on that specific topic.
Okay, we'll put it on the list.
Excellent. I know that we are right up on our time. So really quickly, I'm trying to scan through. If there are any other questions, please post them in the chat or unmute yourself and you can simply ask your question of Dr. Mangum. I don't see any questions. I do want to again thank everyone for joining us this evening for the relaunch of Thriving and Surviving. This is just one of the many topics that we will cover. And thank you so much for the individual that provided that request. If any of you have a specific topic that you would like for us to include on one of our webinar series, you can email me at tmalone@msnurses.org. You can also contact me on my cell, which is 769-226-2524, or you can call the office, whatever is easiest for you. We will do our very best to include a presenter and to make sure that the topic that you requested is covered. But thank you all so much for what you're doing every single day in our state for all of our citizens. Thank you so much for joining us. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the evening. And Dr. Mangum, again, thank you.
Thank you. Remember, hope changes everything.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone.